Hey guys, we're going to start talking about Chapter 12, Organizational Structure. Formal versus informal organizational structures is the first thing we're going to discuss, and formal is the emphasis on an organizational positions and formal power. This provides a framework for defining managerial authority, responsibility, and accountability. Whereas informal, the focus is on the employees and their relationships and the informal power that is inherent within those relationships. It has its own leaders and communication channel, like the grapevine. So, you have those nurses that maybe have been nurses longer, they're the older nurses, and they're the informal leaders within a unit, and then nurses just start sharing communication with each other, and that's called the grapevine. So question one, tell whether the following statement is true or false. Assigning tasks is part of the informal structure. This is false. The formal structure involves planning activities such as assigning tasks, whereas the informal structure is covert and less structured. Bureaucracy versus an organizational design. There must be a clear division of labor. A well-defined hierarchy of authorities must exist. There must be an impersonal rules. There must be a system for dealing with work situations, and there must be a system of rules for covering the rights and duties of each position, and a section of employment must be based on technical competence. Organization structure terminology. You have the span of control, you have the line of authority, staff authority, one man, one boss, unity of command, scalar chain, authority, responsibility, and accountability. Unity of command is indicated by the vertical solid line between positions on the organizational chart, and this concept is best described as one person, one boss, in which employees have one manager to whom they report to and whom they are responsible. It is difficult to maintain in some large healthcare organizations because the nature of healthcare requires a multidisciplinary approach. Why can utility of command be difficult to maintain? A, it can be difficult to keep track of who one reports to. B, the organizational chart can be confusing. Or C, the multidisciplinary nature of healthcare makes it difficult to maintain. Let's C, the multidisciplinary nature of healthcare makes it difficult to maintain. Unity of command is a simple system, but sometimes overly simplified in a complex field such as healthcare. Span of control refers to the number of people directly reporting to any one manager and determines the number of interactions expected of him or her. Too many people reporting to a single manager delays decision making, whereas too few results in inefficient, top-heavy organizations. Centrality is where a position falls on an organizational chart, the degree of communication of a particular management position. The middle manager often has a border view of the organization, and decisions are made by a few managers at the top of the hierarchy. Levels of management include the top level managers, which would be the board of directors, the chief executive officer, and administrators. Then you have your middle level managers, the nursing supervisors, and departmental heads. And then your first level would be like your team leaders, charge nurses, primary care nurses, and case managers. Advantages of the organizational chart is map lines of decision-making authority, so you know who reports to who very clearly. It helps people understand their assignments and those of their coworkers. It reveals to managers the new personnel, how they fit in the organization. It contributes to sound organizational structure, and it shows formal lines of communication. Everybody clearly knows who they report to. Disadvantages of an organizational chart is it does not show the informal structure of the organization. So when you have informal leadership, like the clinical nurse specialists, no one actually reports to them, so there would be no clear line. Although they do have value and leadership to the organization, they don't fall on that chart. It does not indicate the degree of authority held by each line person. It may show things as they are supposed to be or used to be rather than as they are if it's not continuously updated. Possibility exists of confusing authority with status. Types of organizational structures include line structures, ad hoc design, matrix structures, service line organization, and flat designs. So here's a flattened organizational chart that keeps it very simple. You can see you have your chief nursing officer, followed by the nurse managers, and then the staff that report to them. Ad hoc design has modifications of the bureaucratic structure. It's sometimes used temporarily to facilitate project completion within a formal line organization. It overcomes the inflexibility of the line structure. It serves as a way for professionals to handle increasingly large amounts of information. It uses a project team or task approach and is usually disbanded after the project is complete. It may result in decreased employee loyalty to the parent organization. Tell whether the following statement is true or false. Ad hoc design is incompatible with a formal line structure. This is false. The ad hoc design can be used temporarily as it's ad hoc to facilitate a project completion within a formal line organization. It's used as needed. The matrix organization is designed to focus on both the product and the function. You have a formal vertical and horizontal chain of command, have fewer formal rules and fewer levels of hierarchy, can cause slow decision making due to informal information sharing, and can produce confusion and frustration for workers because of dual authority hierarchical design. Service line organizations are used in some large institutions to address the shortcomings that are endemic to traditional large bureaucratic organizations, sometimes called care-centered organizations, and smaller in scale than larger bureaucratic. Flat organizational designs remove that hierarchical layers by flattening the chain and decentralizing the organization. They continue to have a line of authority, but because the organizational structure is flattened, more authority and decision-making can occur where the work is being carried out. Despite being very flat, often retain many characteristics of a bureaucracy. Scalar chain is the decision-making hierarchy or pyramid is often referred to as scalar chain. So it's that decision-making hierarchy. Centralized versus decentralized decision-making. An organization with centralized decision-making has a few managers at the top of the hierarchy making the most decisions. And then decentralized decision-making is diffused throughout the organization, and problems are solved by the lowest practical management level. Usually this means that problems can be solved at the level of which they occur, which can be really good. Question 4, a company that always directs problems to manage at the top of the hierarchy is using A, centralized decision-making, or B, decentralized decision-making. It's centralized decision-making. Remember, in centralized decision-making, a few managers at the top are the ones making most of the decisions, whereas in decentralized process, problems are often addressed at the level of which they occur. So stakeholders are those entities in an organization's environment that play a role in the organization's health and performance or the effect affected by the organization. It can be both internal and external, and every organization should be viewed as being part of a greater community of stakeholders. I'm sorry, my dog's barking. Definitions, accountability, responsibility, and authority. Accountability is the moral responsibility that accompanies a position. Responsibility is related to a job assignment and must be accompanied by enough authority to accomplish the assigned task. And authority is the official power to act and direct the work of others. Organizational culture, this is the value and behaviors that contribute to the unique social and physiological environment of an organization. Usually you can understand an organization's culture really by looking at its mission statement. So it's a sum total of values, language, past history of sacred cows, formal and informal communication networks, and a rituals of an organization. It differs from organizational climate, how individuals perceive the organization. Organizational climate is how people perceive it. It's how employees perceive an organization. The perception may be accurate or inaccurate, and people in the same organization may have different perceptions about the same organization. And the climate can change over time. So how employees perceive an organization is A, organizational climate, organizational culture, organizational chart, or organizational structure. That would be the organizational climate. Building a new culture. Success in building a new culture often requires new leadership and or outside analysis. Shared governance was introduced in the 1980s, and it's where nurses at every role can play a part in the decision that affects nursing activities through the system. Nurse managers move out of the traditional industrial model roles into collegial models, becoming moderators of the service process, usually defined as a structure of for rules or bylaws. So in shared governance, there are usually councils or committees that are in place that look at different areas affecting nursing and or the interprofessional care model. So this is where the direct care nurses are the leaders within the structure, and the managers are there to be the moderators of the meetings. And decisions can be made about changes in practice by those direct care nurses. This is also a really good way for nurses to get involved and network within their organization, and can lead to advancement in careers. Participatory management, although participatory management lays the foundation for shared governance, they are not the same. Participatory management implies that others are allowed to participate in decision making over which someone has control. Thus, the act of allowing participation identifies for the participant the real and final authority. Characteristics of management hospitals. They are well-qualified nursing executives in the decentralized environment with organizational structures that emphasize open participatory management. They're autonomous, self-managing, self-governing climates that allow nurses to fully practice their clinical expertise, flexible staffing, adequate staffing ratios, and clinical career opportunities. A professional practice culture in all aspects of nursing care, in compliance with the standards of the ANA's, the American Nurses Association's scopes and standards of nurse administrators. The 14 forces of magnetism for magnet hospitals, status number 1. So magnet hospitals are a kind of certification that a hospital can seek that shows that they are meeting high standards. And the 14 forces and some of the statuses that are looked at include quality of nursing leadership, organizational structure, management style, personnel policies and programs, professional models of care, so that every organization actually adopts a professional practice model for their nursing staff. So have a nursing theorist and a professional practice model that nurses use in their everyday care delivery. An example of this would be Lakeland Regional and their professional practice model using Joanne Duffy's quality caring model, and how caring factors are used throughout the organization in the way they've created their policies and procedures and the way they deliver their care. Number 6 would be the quality of care. Number 7 is quality improvement. Number 8 is consultation and resources. 9, autonomy. 10, community and hospital in the hospital. Nurses as teachers. image of nursing, interdisciplinary relationships, and then finally your professional development. These are 14 things that the Magnet organizations will look for within hospitals. So Pathway to Excellence recognizes healthcare organizations with foundational quality initiatives in creating a positive work environment as defined by nurses and supported by research. So this is another almost award that organizations can get for really striving to have that positive work environment, for cultivating that spirit of inquiry and encouraging their nurses and the organization to use evidence-based practice, to have a structure for shared governance and empower their nurses at the bedside to be a part of the decision making. That is all a part of the Pathway to Excellence. And if you have questions about the Pathway to Excellence, want to talk about it, I presented at the conference twice and would love to talk to you about it. It's kind of a really cool thing. So committees, too many are usually used within shared governance. Committees or councils, they can be called either interchangeably, and there can be too many in an organization. That can be a sign of a poorly designed organizational structure. And they should have an appropriate number of members, prepared agendas, clearly outlined tasks, and some executive leadership that can help make the decision, that can help initiate the decision making. Help initiate the decisions that have been made. So organizational effectiveness is a structure clearly defined, built within few management levels. You have unit staff that need to see where their tasks fit. You have organizational structure that enhances communication and decision making. Staff is organized to create a sense of community and belonging, and nursing services organized to develop future leaders. And that is it for chapter 12.